Hello, all, and welcome to the weekly podcast series Genco Keynote. I'm your host, Gurdwara, and I have my co host Navdeep Chima with me. So, he's joining us from Canada, British Columbia. He works with MasterCard as a software engineer. And in today's podcast, we have an accomplished software engineering professional, Raman Narwal. So he will share his educational and professional journey with us. So we believe that the experiences, lifelong learning of Raman will help guide our youth towards their career and help them grow professionally. Now we welcome Raman and request him to please share his educational and professional journey with us.
Yeah, thank you, Gurtej, and thank you, Navdeep. Welcome, both of you, and
Welcome.
thank you for welcoming me. So myself, Ramandeep Singh, or you can call me Raman Narwal. I will just go a little bit back, and I did my bachelor's in computer science from GNE Ludhiana, and my batch was 2001 to 2005. So after that, I came to US for my master's degree. I did my master's in software engineering from San Jose State, and I did pass out that in 2009. So from 2009, I started working. My first job was with Wells Fargo. I've worked as a different in different domains, different kind of job profiles. Started with quality analyst, worked as a database analyst, and then right now working as a business system analyst, senior business system analyst in Bank of West. It's been, I think, almost about 12 years in the industry now, and I'm glad to share that experience with you and with the audience here.
Thank you very much, Raman. Now I'll request Navdeep to please take us into the conversation.
Sure. Welcome, Ramandeep. It's nice to have you on this interaction. Can you tell us a little bit more about like your day-to-day activities? Like, what do you do as a business analyst?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, before going to the day-to-day activities, I really want to go over what are the different roles in the industry, because even I think if I go a little bit of back when we were doing bachelors or we were doing masters, we did not knew what are the different roles in industry, right? We were
Sure.
studying coding, we were studying process diagrams, all these things we were studying, but we were not sure what role we will land in industry. So I think let's talk about that a little bit. So
Sure.
in IT industry, presently, the main role is project manager, scrum master. So project manager slash scrum master. Why we added a scrum master here? So basically, at this moment, everything shifted from that waterfall methodology to agile. All the project manager, that's what I have seen. They are transitioning and they're working as a scrum master in the industry. And then in that scrum team, there are business analysts who will write down the requirements for the company, for the business sponsors. And then in that scrum team, we have developers who will write the code. We will have a quality assurance, quality analyst who will test that code. And then UX designer is also main role, but sometime in some of the companies, some of the teams, we don't have a separate UX designer, and that role is kind of merged between business analyst and the developer. So either the business analyst will work as a business analyst slash UX designer, or some of the developer will work as a UX designer. So these are the basic important roles in the IT industry right now. So one of the more, I think I really want to add up one point here about the business analyst. So not only business analyst, but there is a product owner role that's also in huge demand in the industry right now. So in the earlier in waterfall methodology, we had product managers. We have worked with them, right? So once we move from that waterfall methodology to agile, those product managers are no longer product managers. Either they're playing a role as product owners, which is kind of a really strict role in agile scrum team, or they're playing a role of a combination of a business analyst slash product owner, where they are responsible for writing the requirements from the scratch and then moving to the implementation team, to the scrum team, to actually guide the scrum team to deliver the minimum viable product throughout, from the start sprint one to the final sprint, and to implement the product. So that those are the high level important roles in the IT industry at the moment.
So you briefly mentioned, Ramandeep, that there has been a transition from waterfall to agile process of software development. Can you highlight some differences for our listeners? Because there might be some people who are trying to get into this field, and also can you recommend some certifications which would help
Sure.
them?
Sure. Thank you for asking that question. That's a very important question because sometimes we don't know really, what is there in waterfall methodology, or if we
Mhm.
are working in waterfall, we don't know what is expected in agile, right? So automated call, and that actually muted me on.
No, no problem, no problem.
So yeah, we were talking about the waterfall, right? So in waterfall, we used to work with the project manager, project manager. I'll explain that role. And then the QA team will be separate, and the development team will be separate. So all those, and even the UX team who are preparing the UI designs, mock-ups, prototype, they're separate team. They're all separate teams. Yes, they're working for a one project, but they are all separate teams. And then how the project will start. So it will start with the documentation, writing the business, writing the BRDs, business requirement documentation. And then sometime what I've seen in the past is this BRD preparation will take like a month to prepare, months to write actual requirements. And then that requirement, once that BRD is done, then that document is moved from our product managers to the technical team. So technical team will write a functional specification document. So that functional specification document, once done, will be given to our QA teams, and then QA teams will write their own test plans, and then the actual work start at the moment. So there is a huge waiting period, like first few weeks for the business requirement documentation, next few weeks for the functional requirement documentation, then the test plan, and then so on. And then the UX team will use those BRDs, FSDs to prepare their prototypes, and then the actual work will start at that moment. So there is a 2 months, 3 months period that teams are using to actually start the work. So that's a huge issue. That's a huge issue for the teams, right? That's a huge issue for a company, because what we have seen in the past, if the project is huge, where they're, let's say, they're redesigning, or the company's building a whole new website for the customers, they have to actually wait for whole 6 to 8 months to have that smaller version of a prototype ready for the customers, right? At that moment, things can change. There will be new technologies, new things coming out in the market. So the chances of failure is huge. So
So I
that's
think
where.
in this competitive world, as you said, I mean, it's very important to have very fast time to market. I think there's a term you call TTM, which they use in the industry. So just to add what you were just saying, so it's really important to deliver the product to the market in a faster time frame.
And
Absolutely,
Raman, I think
absolutely.
it implies to all the softwares, like now on cell phones or anywhere. So it's all software-based industry. Can you,
Correct.
for anybody who is not aware what software development life cycle is, just a small example maybe of an email or something. So what product owners do, documents, and
Mhm.
just with an example.
Yeah, sure, sure. So let me take this example from the agile point of view. So let's say there is a project, and a business sponsor wants to prepare some kind of a portal for the customer, where the customer will set up their profile and they will buy the product from that company. Very simple product. Let's say, I'm just taking example here. So in that product, or that portal which team is planning to build, a business analyst will come into picture first. So they will actually write a business case. They will actually write a very high level requirements, talking to the stakeholders. They will prepare some kind of a process diagram, present to the team, elicit the requirement, write down the requirement, analyze the requirement. So that's where actual work of a business analyst start in the first phase. So once they have those process diagrams ready, they jump to the so in this case, let's say the company is using Jira. So they will go to that Jira, they will write down the user stories in a high level form. We call it epics. So epics is like high level functionality for that portal which we are building. So at that moment, we are working with the Scrum team, and then Scrum Master will drive that Scrum team developer will come into picture. They will actually code for those user stories that business analyst wrote down. Quality analyst will write down his test cases. He will do his stress prep. UX designer will prepare the prototypes, UI design prototypes. They will. So that's the structure of the Scrum team. So that's where actual work will start for that minimum viable product.
So just to add to what just Ramandeep mentioned, for our listeners who might be, there might be some terms which are new to them. They might not be familiar with those. So it could be a case that if you go start working for a company, you might have to wear multiple hats. So sometimes the teams probably won't have all the roles which we just discussed, like a BA or a product owner or a developer. So sometimes you have to wear multiple hats. So, I mean, this is just like an informational thing that I wanted to share, that, somebody who is trying to get into the industry might have to prepare for multiple roles that you might have to perform at the job.
Yeah, thank you, Navdeep. Yeah. So I will just take that to just add one more thing to there, what just Navdeep said. So business analysts, for example, when you're saying multiple hats, that's what I've seen. So when business analysts actually writing requirements and coming to the Scrum team, their main role is kind of stopped there. If the company has or Scrum team has the product owner. If company or team does not have the product owner, then that business analyst will move from his requirement gathering, requirement writing, analysis phase to actually Scrum team, and he will act as a product owner. So where he will actually prioritize the user stories, he will work with that Scrum team to answer their questions, to answer any blockers, day-to-day activities involved in daily Scrum. So that's actually a perfect example when you're saying they have to wear multiple hats, especially for the business analyst.
Right. No, thank you, Raman. Now, will you kindly share us, so as you mentioned that a product analyst and a business analyst that has a key role to document the requirement, because stakeholders, they will let him know in the layman term, he has to format everything in the documentation so that the developer will write the code for that kind of application. So just walk us through what business analyst role is.
Right. So let me just read through what is there in the slide and then I'll explain it. So business analysts are responsible for bridging the gap between IT and the business team. I would say bridging the gap between IT and the business users or business sponsors. So they are the bridge between the business team and the IT team. So in that, I will just take one example of a portal that I just mentioned before, right? So business team or business sponsors want to build that product. They want to build that portal for the customers so that customers can they create the profile and they buy the product for their company. So that's it. That's what one-liner business case is from the business team. But then IT team will not understand it, that one-liner. There can be hundreds of other things. There can be 50 different screens that business team want. But to get that out of from that business team, business analysts will come into picture. So they will work with the business team, business users, stakeholders to get out those details from them, document it, write it down, and then that work or those requirements will be more clear for our IT team to capture, and they can work on those requirements to actually code it. So that's the main role of, I think that's how I can summarize business analyst role or product analyst role in the easier terms.
So who do you, one more question on this topic. So who is your point of contact in your day-to-day work? Like, where do you get your business requirements from? Is it somebody from inside the company, or is it somebody who is actually using your end product?
It depends. But if I just take example of this portal, a company wants to build a portal. So first of all, the point of contact is my internal business team, internal business sponsors. So those are my starting point. And then other SMEs involved, compliance team, my operational team, my other cross-functional teams who I will be working, who this portal will be communicated. This, there can be a reporting, there can be a data consumption that's coming from other team, or there can be a transaction flow from this application to other groups. So that's the starting point. But then yes, there will be external customers, external vendors, I would say, because in some cases, the companies or the teams that are working with external vendors to actually code for them. So in that case, for a business analyst, they have to work with the internal users or internal stakeholders and the external stakeholders. So it all depends on where the teams are, which type of a team you're working with. If you have most of the groups internally available, then yes, then you have to work internally within the group.
I think that explains it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, so some of the steps that in the business analysis, because from a layman's understanding, so business analysts, they have to have a great communication skills. They have to be a liaison between the product owners who will be telling in the layman language, okay, I need this. Then that person is a bridge between those stakeholders and the developers who will be doing the coding. So what are the steps involved in business analysis?
So yeah, thank you for sharing this diagram. I will just explain in a very simple language, not go by the diagram. So let's say, I started working with a new company and I'm assigned a new new product where they're building this kind of portal, right? So for me, initial phase, I will work with the business sponsor. I will work with my SMEs to write down what they actually need, what they need in a first phase of a project. For example, there can be, this portal can be a huge deal, right? So let's divide it. So first of all, I would see if this portal or if this functionality or application which we are building can be divided into parts, because that's what the main rule is. Because otherwise it can take months to develop the product, right? So I will talk to my SMEs, will talk to my business sponsors, what is the main critical functionality they're looking from this portal. So that's where initial thing will start, write down the requirements, maybe write down in a documentation way, like we can call it a business requirement documentation, or it can be Excel, whatever format you within a company or within a team you're using. Write it down and then analyze it further, make a process diagram, think about how that end-to-end flow work. Let's say we are talking about a customer who will come into this portal, who will sign up, how they will sign up. They're creating the username, they're creating the password. When they sign up, what type of products will be available on the first screen? What type of products will be available on the next screen? How they will order the products, right? So all those things will come into picture. So you can analyze that by preparing a process diagram. So prepare a process diagram, present it over again to your stakeholder, get their thoughts out, explain to them. So that's the first phase of a business analyst, to actually show them easier in a process diagram, in a data flow diagram, how you are thinking, how this portal should be built. And then based on the feedback, you keep on, so use the iterative approach, you build on, you add that, clarify the requirements, you clarify those process diagrams. So that's the first phase. Once you are almost kind of clear, have the clear picture of the requirements, write down in a business requirement documentation, or you can go straight to the Jira if your team is using Jira as a tool to write down the requirements or use stories. Write your clear, groomed user stories in the Jira. So that's the first phase of a project.
So yeah, sorry, Gurtej, before we proceed, I wanted to re-ask that question. I think it fell through the cracks. So are there any certifications, Ramandeep, that you recommend to our listeners, who might be trying to get into this field, which might help land or get their foot in the door?
Yeah, sorry. I think you did ask that question before. So yes, I would say, first of all, what I've seen when I try to change my job from one company to another company, I would say CBAP, C-B-A-P, I forgot the full form of it, IIBA, you can, if listeners are listening, they can go to IIBA website and they can search for that certification. That certification I've seen is really, really important out there. If you're transitioning from a one field to business analyst or product analyst role, CBAP will give you a huge jump ahead of the other candidates in front of you.
Are these paid certifications, and do they have an expiration date?
Yeah, I think for CBAP, this is absolutely, yes, it's a paid certification. I don't think there's too much, maybe 500 to $700, $800 you have to spend. And then expiration date you asked, I believe they have that expiration date, but there are still some points you can, I think you have to go again to this IABA website, do a small classes again to get
Yeah.
those points, and they will, I think your expiration date will be extended, something like that.
And I think once you are in the field already, it's easier for anybody to renew that certification, since you are kind of more familiar like with the industry, what's going on.
Exactly.
So,
And I want to add one more thing here when we're talking about certification, especially for the business analyst or product analyst. I would also recommend a person to get a Scrum Master certification or product owner certification. And that's very easy compared to CBAP. For CBAP, yes, you have to actually spend few months on it. It's really a huge, there's quite a lot to read. There's a big book of CBAP. But for the product owner or Scrum Master, it's just a 2-day class, and after 2 days, you give that exam right away, you will get a certification. The reason I'm mentioning it, when you're applying for a new job, sometimes they will keep that as a required thing to have a product owner or Scrum Master certification. Because if you don't have it, doesn't matter how much experience you have, you will be behind the other candidates. So that's one really important point I want to mention.
Yeah, and it's not really a cheap certification, even though it's a 2-day course. As you said, I think it costs about $1,200 US dollars.
Yeah, something close to 1,000 for sure. Yes.
Right.
Sure.
So and once you, just to add to what you said, so I think once you have that, you start working in the industry for 2 years, then you can go one level up in if you want to go into Scrum Master role or like a product owner role. So yeah, as you said.
Yeah, thank you.
And Raman, any graduate can do these certifications, because somebody like COVID has changed everything. So some people would want to transition from one job to another, one role to another. So are there some requirements or prerequisites for some certain education, or any graduate can have the Scrum Master certification?
Yeah, what I have seen from my experience, some of the companies will list out, they will just say that the bachelor's degree in mathematics, bachelor's degree in finance, or bachelor's degree in any field, and then these certifications. So I would say if a person has done a bachelor's degree, I think that should be good enough. And then once they get these certifications, especially the product owner or Scrum Master, they can actually jump to the business analyst or product analyst role, and then they can complete the CBAP or other certification if needed. That's what I would recommend.
Right. So moving further, as Raman, you were mentioning about the requirement gathering, business requirement documents. Just walk us through about the requirement elicitation and requirement analysis under this business analyst role.
Yeah, thank you, Gurdej. Yeah, I think this part we partly already discussed it. So requirement elicitation analysis, the first 4 I would say come under the elicitation when you are actually writing down the requirements, very high level requirements. So you can do a workshop, you can set up a workshop with your SMEs, business sponsors, you can invite your technical managers, operational group managers. So all those will come into this workshop. You talk to them, discuss the requirements, write down the requirements, and same thing you can use any of those approach like workshop, interviews, observation session, brainstorming session. I would pick out the workshop out of it. The reason is workshop is a place you can spend actually half a day or even a full day, multiple days, and then there will be a lot of SMEs will be invited to this workshop. So you can actually get a lot of questions already are being answered within that workshop, so you don't have to do too much of follow-ups. So I would pick workshops as a really good approach to write down the requirement. And then last 4 will come under the analysis, how the requirement should be analyzed. You can prepare a process diagram, you can prepare a context diagram, data flow diagram is also very important if you have that. Sometime you have to pick as a business analyst, you have to pick out of these what representation you want to present those requirements to your stakeholders. They won't ask for the process diagram. Sometimes they won't. They are just waiting. They don't know what to ask from you. So sometimes you have to come up with the best approach. So in this, I would pick up process diagram, data flow diagram, because process diagram would explain your requirement in really good visual representation to your team. They can visualize what you're talking about. They can visualize, and then they can connect that to their requirements and then give you a proper feedback. So I think that's what requirement elicitation analysis talks about.
Yeah, Navdeep?
Yeah, so give me a second. I had a question in mind, but I think I'm drawing a blank here. Can you talk about any like who is like somebody who is in doing their graduation? Like, can you talk about some of the courses that you recommend? Before we move on to this slide, I had this question, so I wanted to ask. Sorry, I'm going off topic. So
yeah, no, sure. That's
if we can throw some light on those academics, like what like courses should be selected when doing their graduation, so that they can land a better job. So.
Yeah, courses I wouldn't remember. It's been a while, but what I remember from the past is if I would suggest one thing here. If person because that's what we felt when we were doing bachelor's and master's. If you're not really good in coding, I don't get demotivated. Don't get into that frame that I'm doing my bachelor's in computer science or software engineering. I'm not good in coding, and that's it. I don't have a future. There are hundreds of different type of jobs available in the market, in the industry. So, and business analyst, product analyst is one of them. So courses, Navdeep, I wouldn't remember on top of my head, but I wouldn't remember the name of the courses, but yeah, I would say anything related to a business process. Those courses you can take. I don't remember the name of the courses. Sorry about that.
That's
but,
okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to know all the answers. That's okay. We can.
Yeah, no, but that's a good point. So because there are lots of avenues and opportunities, only coding is not there. So database is there. You have to know the information technology, how it functions. Like business analyst, that is a bridge. So that person doesn't code, but without a business analyst, no application, no software will get built. So we have project managers, product managers, scrum masters, quality assurance analyst. So there are lots of roles, whichever interests you, one can build upon on those roles and responsibilities.
Absolutely, and I think back to your question, Navdeep. So when you're asking about like courses, I wouldn't remember the name of the courses, but I would say to the audience who are watching this, read your courses, read the detail in the courses, what is mentioned there.
Sure.
I would say that will give them a clear picture, because if they are listening to our show, whatever the terms we have used, if something is interested to you and you are searching through the courses, read about what that course is about. I think that would clarify them a little bit about the detail of the courses and how that will help them in the future.
Sure. Thank you.
Right. So Raman, now can you share us with the day-to-day activities that a business analyst has to do to do his job?
Yes, thank you for this slide. Yeah, this one I prepared, but there is so much to talk about this. So day-to-day activities. I would take example of a project which is being in a very start phase. Requirement is on a high level. If someone is already writing a requirement, you jumped into that team. So as a business analyst, first of all, your main responsibility is having a clear requirements. So that's the main responsibility. So your day will be revolved around clarifying the requirements. Write down the user stories if you are using Jira. If the requirements is not clear, set up a meeting with with your stakeholders. When I mentioned identifying stakeholders, gathering requirements from the stakeholders, preparation of the documentation. So set up a meeting with your product owner, set up a meeting with the business analyst of other group if your application is dependent on some other application for any kind of a data flow or any kind of a reporting, right? So anything you can be dependent on n number of different applications. Or set up your meeting with the compliance, set up a meeting with your SME team to clarify the requirements. So I think that's the main responsibility. First of all, in day-to-day activities, have a clear requirement. So if you have a clear requirement, let's move to the next phase. So let's say requirements are done, written in the user story, written in the Jira, then your day-to-day activity will be involved in a Scrum team. And talk to your Scrum team, involved in daily Scrum, answer any blockers if there is a question from the technical team. Also grooming session. Yeah, grooming session, I think we didn't talk about that. So grooming session is very important when you are starting a new sprint. What new user stories will be picked or what new user stories team will work on, there has to be grooming. Those user stories need to be very, very clear. They need to be very smaller in size. In size means, let's say I'm saying that I need to build a portal. In that portal, there need to be a username and password and then other things on the screen. So there can be a user story only for a username. There can be a user story only for the password. There can be a user story only for clicking on the submit button, right? So that's what I meant about the granular user story. So that's what grooming session is about. So that's also part for day-to-day activities.
I think
so
that's the whole crux of the Scrum process. I think you break down bigger requirements into smaller chunks, so it's easier to work on and to be delivered quickly to the customers, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So requirement need to be very, very granular, and it's easier for our Scrum team, technical team to story point them. So story point is altogether like different thing. We will not cover it here, but in Agile, requirement need to be very, very defined, and those user story which are based on your requirement need to be very clear and very granular, so that your team, everyone is kind of they are on top of those user story. Development team will code them, QA team will test them, so it's easier for everybody to move from sprint one to last phase and implement that product.
So one question that just came to my mind. So has there been a situation where you had difficult time getting your requirements? Because some user who might be of interest to you, you're looking to get your requirements from that person, but he or she might have their own job responsibilities. So
Absolutely.
Did you ever face a situation like that, and how did you handle it? For our listeners, can you just discuss that?
Yes. Yeah. Let's just pause for 1 second, Navdeep, because I added that question in next slide.
Okay.
So here I mentioned a few other things. Yeah. Can you go back last slide? Yeah, the other things I mentioned here is like preparing training documents. That's also a part of a responsibility for a business analyst or product owner. And then document your meetings when you are working as a business analyst. It's very, very important. You document your meeting anywhere, whatever your team is using. If you're using Confluence, SharePoint, or even in the regular Word or Excel, record your meetings. That's also very important, because sometimes when you are talking about the requirement and then getting the feedback from the SMEs, you just cannot capture everything on your notes, right? So record your meetings, go back to those recordings, and then make sure you capture everything. So those are very, very important points. I really want to talk about that. So okay, now let's move to the next slide. Back to your question, Navdeep. So this is the interview questions. I try to add as many in one slide here. When you are saying getting a requirement from a difficult stakeholder, that's a very, very common question being asked in interviews. I think I would say every interviewer hiring for a business analyst or product analyst will ask that question no matter what. So that question will be there. So thank you for asking the question. Yes, I have dealt with that problem. Sometime the stakeholder or SME, they want to work with you, but they have their own priorities. As you said, they are working on their own product. They're busy with the team. They don't have a time to spend time, clarifying your questions. But for you, there might be something that you really need to get out of that SME to keep your project going. So yes, you have to catch that person. Maybe make some personal connection with that person, talk to them offline, try to build a good rapport with that person. If that
Take them
person
out
doesn't
for
know
lunch,
you,
maybe.
that's very, very important, because once you have that kind of a connection with that person, you went to their desk, maybe, I'm just talking about before this COVID came into, you just go by, their floor, talk to them, or find out some common project manager or product owner who's working with your team and is also working with that SME. So make a personal connection with that person and then try to explain why you need their help, why they're so important to you, why their time is so valuable that you are pushing them to join your meetings. So I think that's very important. Just make a connection there and explain them why you need them.
Sure.
Okay, and then the other interview questions. First of all, I would say people ask, I think in every different role, tell me about yourself, and that's very important, because you have to prepare, you have to write down what you're going to say about yourself for a particular role. It seems very, very easy question, right? Tell me about yourself, and you just start saying anything, right? But this is an important thing. Once you are interviewing for a business analyst or product analyst role, make sure you talk about yourself and you kind of summarize what roles, what projects you have done in the past. Don't go in detail, just on a very high level, explain what you did in last 10 years, 15 years. That's what the interviewer want to know. They don't want to know about what grades you got in the bachelor's degree, what grades you got in the master's degree, right? So they want to know these things, but yes, explain them, tell them you did a bachelor's in this, but focus on the main role for which they're hiring. That's very important.
Sure.
So other questions, let's just go through very quickly about them. What do you understand about the business analyst role? Explain what business analyst does based on your experience. That's also very important. Explain about your recent project. That's also, I think that's a question being asked in every single interview. And then back to your question, Navdeep, how do you handle a difficult stakeholder? It's always there in every interview, how you handle the shifting priorities. Shifting priority means, that interviewer might kind of want to understand your experience from the past, where the priorities might change. As the stakeholders came in, they said, oh, no, we don't want this feature. Now we want this feature. That feature is really important than the feature A. So how did you handle that? That's very important for interview to kind of get that answer from you. How did you handle those situations? Because that's very, very, very common.
Yeah, I think these are all very, very important questions. And I think just for our listeners, I would like to add one thing, that I think researching the company is very important, like whatever company you're interviewing with. You need to have an absolute clarity on, what the company does, what their end user is. I think that really helps and makes an impression on the interviewer, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Navdeep. I will not go to the rest of the questions, but I will add one more point there. Yes, search the companies. Also, check the profile, check the LinkedIn profiles of the people who are interviewing you. It's very, very important. The reason is you can actually prepare according to the interviewers. For example, you are interviewing for a business analyst role, and the person who is interviewing is a data analyst. So then you know for sure that that person will ask you some data analyst question. They will ask you some question on the SQL, on the databases. And then let's say there are two people on the panel. One is a project manager, one is a Scrum Master, another one is a program manager or something, right? That moment you will know they will not go into detail for the data management or databases. They will not go into technical design questions. So please research what is being asked there. Who are your interviews? Check the LinkedIn profile. Read about them. That's very, very important.
Yeah, I think and your own LinkedIn profile needs to stand out. I mean, try to add as much valuable information to your LinkedIn profile, because mostly recruiters and companies try to look up on LinkedIn, what your background is.
Absolutely.
And so I think that is very important. So you absolutely need to be careful when setting up your LinkedIn profile.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Navdeep.
Thank you, Raman. These were very important roles and responsibilities that you shared about what is STLC, what is a business analyst, because now things are opening up because of COVID is slowly getting down and jobs are coming up. If somebody wants to find a new opportunity in this domain or wants to do a change, as you mentioned, there are certifications available. So there are CBAP is there, IIPA is there, Scrum Master, Product Owner. So just everyone just look for these certifications, and if you like them, explore more. Then you can always ask Raman, Navdeep, or whoever is around you in those domains for any kind of guidance. So before we end, anything that comes to your mind, Navdeep?
Yeah, one thing I was thinking if we can maybe somehow share our emails with the audience. I mean, if they have any questions, maybe they can reach out to us for any kind of references or any clarifications.
Right. No, sure.
We
We'll
can
post it.
do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, other than that, I think I'm good. I don't have any other questions. I think it was pretty good discussion. So thank you, Ramandeep. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no,
Raman,
thank
any
you, thank you.
message for a school or college-going student who is interested into software engineering field? So, a message for them.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, there is a lot of room to grow in this industry, but make sure you know which role you want to be. That's very important, but that's where we faced a problem. So now you have a people, now you can talk to like myself, Navdeep, or other people around you who are working in the industry, talk to them, and then it will be easier for you to vision yourself in the industry, and it will be easier for you to make that mark.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. As we already discussed, LinkedIn, that is a great platform for all the professionals. So you can just connect with anybody, send a message. So I would say everybody is available to share their knowledge and information. It's you have to ask them.
Yes,
Sure.
yes, correct.
Yeah, with that, we today learned some of the opportunities, options, and routes to be in software development lifecycle, software engineering, business analyst, and how a school or college-going student who is interested can prepare towards their dream professions. So with that, I would want to thank all the viewers for watching. Please send us your questions that need to get answered. We'll request Navdeep, Raman, and all the professionals to get the questions answered. And do provide feedback and suggestions for the topics that you would like to listen. And see you in the next episode. Stay healthy and stay informed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you.